Well, God bless you, and may he keep you. It's always going to be my prayer. I want to share just a little bit with you this morning of a sort of a review. Before we get into today's message, I want to make sure that we understand what God wanted us to take away from Abraham and his relationship with him. The very first thing that God did, he said to Abraham, I am the Lord God Almighty. I am El Shaddai. I am the full-breasted one. Full-breasted one, indicating that you have to come into relationship and get close to me in order to receive from me. It seems that God is looking, and he's still looking. He is still looking for somebody who is seeking him. Abraham sought him, and because Abraham sought him, not the riches, he sought him, God blessed him with more than enough. Then Abraham was so into his God. He's so into his God that God so into him that when he got ready to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, he said this, God said this, should I do this without first talking to Abraham? Who is Abraham? Abraham is his friend. Abraham is God's friend. Brothers and sisters, God says, I need to do something. I need to move in Abraham's life. And, well, what vestment did Abraham have? He wasn't from Sodom or Gomorrah. What vestment did he have? His adopted son, Lot, was in the city of Sodom. God said, before I destroy this city with Lot in it, let me talk to Abraham. And Abraham went into intercessory prayer with God. And God heard him. God heard him, and he said, Abraham said, if you find 50 righteous, if you find 40 righteous, if you find 30 righteous, if you find 20 righteous, if you find 10 righteous, and my Bishop Sherman Gray Jr., the Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, taught us years ago, he said, and I've adopted that belief. He said, I believe that if Abraham had gone a little bit further and said, Lord, if you find one righteous, and if I be that one, if I go to the city, will you believe that God would have spared the city because of his friend Abraham. Brothers and sisters, it leads us to today's message. Today we're talking about Moses and his relationship with God, and we're talking about seeking God's face and not his hand. Moses had a face-to-face relationship with God. Listen to Sister Gray as she reads.
Exodus chapter 17, verses 8 through 13. Then came Amalekite and fought with Israel and Rephidim. And Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go out fight with Amalekite. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in mine hand. So Joshua did as Moses had said to him and fought with Amalekite. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed, and when he let it down, Amalekite prevailed. But Moses' hand were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on one side and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomforted Amalekite, his people. And Matthew 7 through 8. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Exodus 33 and 11. And the Lord spake unto Moses face to face, as a man speaketh unto his friend. And he turned again into the camp, but his servant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, departed not out of the tabernacle.
So today we're talking about the face-to-face relationship with God. And I want you to know, as we talk about this, the first thing I need you to know is that we're not going to hear things when we're going from Moses, we're going from Abraham to Moses, to Daniel, to David. And when we talk about their lives, we're not going to talk about them necessarily in chronological order. But we will start with Moses, and we'll start with Moses where he got his name. There was a decree that went out to Pharaoh when Moses was born, that all of the male children, when they're born, should be killed. Well, Amram and Yochebed found out they were pregnant and they were having a boy. Well, they didn't find out they were having a boy. They had a boy. They didn't have ultrasound. They had a boy. And they took him, and knowing that Pharaoh wanted to kill him, they took him and put him in an ark. And they pushed it into the Nile River. And one of the things that the Egyptian people worshiped was the Nile River. And when they found this basket floating, they said that God had given us a baby. They named him Moses. And Moses means to draw out. They named him Moses because they drew him out of the water. But God wanted him named Moses because he would use him to draw the children of Israel out of Egypt, out of their bondage, their bitter bondage. Moses' life can be tracked into over 120 years in 40 years increments. He spent the first 40 years of his life as an Egyptian. He did. We'll talk about a little bit about this later on in his life. And then the next 40 years of his life, he was a runaway fugitive. Yes, and then the last 40 years of his life, he spent leading the children of Israel through the wilderness. Some negative things about Moses that are going to become important as we talk about him. Moses was a murderer. It's my belief that he understood, even before he met God, that God would use, that something would use, there's something about this bitter bondage and how these people were being treated that just didn't sit right with him. So he decided on his own that he was going to free somebody from an Egyptian, and he killed them. And according to the law, the Egyptian didn't kill an Egyptian, not without facing punishment. So he had to run away and leave for 40 years. Well, most of you know about him because you watched Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments. Here's this beautiful scene where this bush is glowing. One commentator said it wasn't even just actually the bush, it was the entire forest that was on fire. It was just laying the groundwork. And Moses sees this sight. Now, it's really not an oddity for a bush to catch fire in the desert. You get so hot and the bush is so dry, they'll just spontaneously catch fire. What caught Moses' attention about this particular bush that was on fire is that there was fire, but no smoke. You see, something wasn't being consumed. So Moses, being trained, and you have to understand this, a way for these folk who want to claim that Egyptians were just using mythology. These Egyptians believed in what they believed in, and they taught Moses, because he was an Egyptian for 40 years, they taught Moses this craft. Well, what craft? Do you remember when Moses, and we're not going to talk about that today, Moses walks into the court with his rod that God has anointed and put his power in, and Moses throws it on the ground, and Moses' rod turns into a snake, but also the priests of Egypt threw their rods down, they turned into serpents also. We want to dismiss that. We want to bypass that. But if we believe the Bible, that happened. But Moses was trained by these people. He was taught by these people. And then when he encounters God at the burning bush, the first thing God says to him is, take off your shoes. Take off your shoes. Well, why would God want him to take off his shoes? Well, God told him why. I want you to take off your shoes because the ground on which you stand is holy ground. But why? Because later on, when God starts giving the instruction for the tabernacle and the holiest of holies and the priest, God never says that the priest should walk in barefoot. In fact, how many of us have had wonderful spiritual services with our shoes on? The idea is not that God wants us to take our shoes off because we're on holy ground. The idea is this. Moses, being raised as an Egyptian, had a talisman either around his neck or around his shoes, because that's where they put, or in his shoes, that's where they put the talisman. And this talisman was said to protect them from any evil spirit, any spirit, whether evil or not, that they would come in contact, and to give them control over that spirit. Therefore, when God saw Moses walk up to the bush, he knows what's in his shoes, and he tells him, take those shoes off. Oh, I don't think it's so much of an indictment against the talisman And it is to let him know what you've been using, you don't need anymore. I'm about to show you what's real. You're about to come into contact with the real deal. Can I pause to parenthetically insert this? You can't just walk up to God any old way. There are going to be some things, if you want to get real intimate with him, that you're going to have to take off. Some old ways and means, some attitudes, some misadjustments, some realignment has to take place. Now, you're not responsible for saving your soul, but you can be saved. But if you want to get more from God, there are going to be some things that you have to let go. It's going to be some pulling away from the table. There's going to be some putting out some cigarettes. Some things you cannot bring in a certain level of relationship with God. God is saying to Moses, you can't bring this where I'm about to take you, son. Take your shoes off. Moses takes his shoes off. Then God says to him, I've seen the trouble, the struggle, the bondage, the bitterness, the crying. I've heard the cries of my people. Oh, my God, my God. In the wilderness. I'm sorry, not the wilderness. This will be edited out. I've heard the cry of my people in bondage in Egypt. And in essence, I'm going to use you to bring them deliverance. Moses says to him, I can't do this because I stutter. We'll talk about that at a later time. And God says, yes, you can. He said, no, I can't. And God says, don't you have a brother named Aaron? Let Aaron speak for you. I'll let Aaron be prophet, and I'll let you be God in my stead. Oh my God, what's he doing? What's he doing? He is positioning Moses because he's willing to take that off. See, a lot of us want the position in God, but we don't want to take the things off that we need to take off. Moses took it off, and God is positioning him. I want to share something with you that's not in this Bible, but according to Jewish tradition, Joseph, who was in Egypt, first of their family that was in Egypt, said, when I leave, whenever you leave, when the 400 years is up and you leave, don't leave me in Egypt. Take me with you. Take my bones and bury them in the promised land. Oh my God, my God. And then he says this to them. He didn't say it to everybody. He said it to the elders of Israel. Don't tell anybody this, but there's going to be a phrase that's used when the deliverer comes that only the deliverer will know. When he says that phrase, that's how you're going to know this is the one and this is the time. So here Moses is. Here Moses is 400 years later, and he's standing before God. He says, when I go before them and I say to them, that you sent me, they're going to want to know, who's he talking about? He's not talking about the Egyptians. He's talking about the elders of Israel. They're going to want to know, how can I authenticate my move? How can I authenticate my mission? Authenticate my mission. You know what God says to him? He says, you tell them, I am has sent thee. You know what Joseph told the elders 400 years before? When the deliverer comes, this is in essence, in our way of speaking, this is the password. He's going to say, I am has sent me. My God, they were ready then. They knew this was the one. This was the one. And they got ready to get out of bondage. Now, leads us to today's message. That's just the background. Hear this prophet Moses. The Bible says in Exodus 33:11, that when God came to talk to him, this is on a regular basis, God formed himself into a cloud, stood at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and talked to Moses face to face, just like a man would his friend. Oh, we'll talk about it later on in the series, but God says to Moses, we're going to the promised land. You know, I've told you this several times. You're going to the promised land. This is the promised land, and I'm going to send my angel with you. And this is Moses says, who's going? God says, my angel. I'm going to send my angel with you. What angel? What angel? No, I'm going to send my angel with you. So you're not going with us? I'm going to send my angel with you. Moses said, well, if you're not going, I'm not going. He was so confident in his relationship with God, in his face-to-face with God. They said, if you go and any trouble arise, I know you'll take care of it. Because that's the relationship, that's the confidence that builds. When you are in relationship with God, it builds up your confidence in him. So if your confidence in God is weak, what is the conclusion we draw? It's the relationship that's weak. You can fix that. Because the more you spend time with him, the more confident you get in him, the more you get to know him. Moses sought God's face. The Bible says in Psalm number 103 we just read, I think it's somewhere around the 5th verse. Is it the 5th verse, Sister Gray?
Of Exodus?
No, of Psalm 103. Okay, you flipped it. Anyway, this is what it says. It said he made known his ways unto Moses, but his acts unto the children of Israel. Why would God not show his ways to everybody? Glad you asked. God only shows his ways to those who are seeking his face. The children of Israel did not seek the face of God, they sought his hand. What does that mean, to seek his hand? That means that I want what God can do for me. You know Janet Jackson, song. Anybody familiar with Janet Jackson song she made years ago? What have you done for me lately? That's how we treat God. We don't even say thank you for what you've done. We say, what have you done for me lately? Oh, yeah. When we were in bondage, when we were living from pillar to post, didn't have a house to live in, living in somebody's basement, in somebody's extra room. Now you've got us in a house, and now you're not satisfied. You're not satisfied with God with that. You want to know, God, what have you done for me lately? Because all we're interested in is what God can give us. That's why we go to let me stop. But could it be that we're attracted to the large churches with the popular preachers, with the fine clothes and the nice ministry because they look rich? And if I could hook up with them, I can get rich. Is it possible that it's not a relationship with God we're looking for, but we're looking for what comes in his pocketbook? Jesus said this in Matthew. He said, seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be open. Are you seeking? Are you knocking? Or do you forget about God until some tragedy happens in your life? You forget about God until you need him. Then you're no different from the children of Israel. You'll always be wanting to see his acts because he's merciful. That's what Psalm 103 told us. He's merciful. He's gracious. Show mercy to whom he will show mercy. That's what he told Moses. I'll show mercy to whom I will show mercy. And you're relying on God's mercy rather than on a relationship with him. I don't know about you today, but today I want to know him. I want his face. Oh my God. Oh my God. What's it mean? What's it mean that Moses had a face-to-face relationship with God? It means that God showed him his character. He showed Moses how he was. He made known to Moses how he was. He only showed Israel what he can do. I want you to know that I'm glad that God can do something, but you've heard me say, I'll say it time and time again, and I'll continue to say it. I thank him not for what he's done, not for what he will do, not for what he's going to do, but I thank him because of who he is. It is because of who he is. Brothers and sisters, I seek his face, and I encourage you to be face seekers. Lord, I want to be where you are. I want to be in your presence. Oh, there's going to come a time, and we don't have time to teach about it, so I'll just mention it, because we'll teach about it later on when Moses says to him, I want to see you. And God says, no, Moses, you can't see me. There's no man can see me and live. Oh, my God, my God. And Moses said, Lord, I want to see you. But because he was his friend, what did God do? He found a way for Moses to see him. And he said this. Listen to what he said. He said, I'm going to pass the cleft of the rock. And when I pass by, I'm going to put my hand over you because you can't see me and live. But once I pass, you can see my hinder parts. Brothers and sisters, let me tell you something. When I tell you to seek God's face and not his hand, we have a greater opportunity than even Moses had, because he hid Moses in the rock. You know what? God reveals himself to us through the rock that's Jesus Christ. You ought to get to know him as your personal Savior. Yes, so you can be born again and go into heaven. No, not only that, but so you can live. And he can show himself, he can manifest himself through the world through you. But you're so busy looking for the blessing. Running to the next church with the next popular preacher that's preaching the next popular series of messages on how you can get your stuff. Oh, you love that song, that I went to the enemy's camp and took back what he stole from me. But I'm saying to you, if you get with God, maybe the enemy won't steal from you in the first place. Maybe the enemy's stealing from you because you're so busy seeking the things and not God. What happens? Well, one of the benefits we find right here as we end the message, as we close the message, we find one of the huge benefits of Moses being a face seeker and not a hand seeker. Moses and the children of Israel found themselves in a place called Rephidim, and they were facing an enemy in Rephidim called the Amalekites. And the Amalekites, let me read a little bit of it here, because you may not want to believe it, but let me just read a little bit of it here. They were nomads, and not only were they nomads, but Israel, even to this day, it says here that the Israelites consider them the embodiment of evil. Mm-hmm. So in essence, for us today, it's not Amalekites, it's Lucifer, it's Satan, it is the adversary. Look where he attacked them at. The word Rephidim means a place of rest. The Amalekites attacked them when they were at their place of rest. That's what the devil wants to do. The devil is not an idiot. He is shrewd and he is calculating. He underestimates God, has always underestimated God, and I trust always will underestimate God because he doesn't know him. He doesn't know him. I mean, he hadn't come into fellowship with him. They're not part of one another. But he wants to attack you in your restful, peaceful place. Things going right in the marriage. Money is right. Then bam, all of a sudden, something crazy happens. You go to bed with your back turned to one another. You're being attacked in your peaceful place. It is at those times of attack, brothers and sisters, that I'm not interested in what God can do for me. I'm interested in him. Why am I interested in him? Because like Moses, who had a face-to-face relationship with God, God told Moses what he needed to do when the Amalekites jumped them in their place of peace. Listen to what Moses said. Moses said to Joshua, choose out men. He didn't say, don't get the entire army, but just get specific men to go out and fight with Amalek. Listen now. Tomorrow, I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. Remember that rod? That's the one he threw down. That's the one God said, I'm going to put my power in your rod. He said, I'm going to stand to the top. Where does Moses get this instruction from? He gets this instruction from his relationship, his face-to-face relationship with God. He didn't walk out knowing, well, this is the strategy to fight the Amalekites. No, for this particular reason, for this particular situation, I need to know from God what it is he needs me to do. And God told him, get to the top of the hill. He got to the top of the hill and the battle started down in the valley. As long as Moses' hands were up, Israel was winning. Moses' arms got tired, and he put them down, and the Amalekites started to win. Then Aaron and Hur, standing beside Moses, raised up, helped elevate his arms. As Moses' arms were elevated, Israel won the victory. What is God saying to us today? Perhaps he's saying this. Perhaps he's saying, let me show you how to fight the battle. I'm not necessarily going to take you out of the battle, but if you come to me in my face, I'll whisper to your heart how to win. When in the argument, when honey's been coming home every day from work, with an attitude, and you're just ready now because you got your list in your head of what you're going to say to him. And then if he say this, I'm going to say that. And God says, no, be still. When he comes in, go ahead on and cook. When he comes in, take him a bottle of water. Hug him and kiss him and tell him that you thank him for being the man that he is. No. When you're in a relationship with God, he's going to tell you what you need to do. Now listen, those instructions, that directive he gives you is exclusive for you. You can't then call your girlfriend who's fighting with Johnny and say, girl, this is what I did. Because it may not work for them because God didn't say do that. Moses followed the instruction. So what are you saying? I'm saying there are things that you can do in the spirit that can affect what happens in your life in the flesh. Worried about your children? Get to the mountaintop and find out from God what you need to do. Worried about the job? Maybe they're laying off in California and it's coming down to Texas. It's coming down to Louisiana. What is it that you need to do? You don't need to call pastor. You need to go get a face-to-face with God and get some directive. Can I be a little comical? This is my sermon, right? I wonder if God when he sees some of us coming, oh Lord, what's she want now? What's he need? I know he needs something. The angel said, gonna use it. Marquise is coming. And the Lord said, what's going on with Marquise? What do he need now? Didn't I give him the car? Didn't I bless him with the truck? Well, I guess he want a house now. I ain't heard from Marquise in 6 months. Are you like that with God? Marquise is here with me and he's shaking his head no. He said he's not like that with God. He is forming a relationship and it's getting deeper and deeper. Why? What kind of relationship do you think LaTanya and I would have? I'm just asking. Because we have a good relationship. It doesn't mean we don't fight, because we do. But we can always come back. And we are one another's backbone. You know why? Because we spend time together. Yeah. How are you going to say you want a relationship with God and you never spend time with him? Face to face. Here's what's wonderful about that. When Israel was in the wilderness and they needed manna because they were hungry, Moses simply went to God and said, we need manna. We need food, and God rained manna. When they got tired of manna, because, when folks seek the hand and not the face, they easily get unsatisfied. They get tired of the hand. They got tired of the manna, and they said, we're tired of eating manna. As a matter of fact, you know what manna means? Manna literally means, what is this? And when I say it like that, it sounds nice. So you think about it. When they looked at it, God said, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to feed you. What is this? That's just what it was. When they got tired of what is this, Moses went to God again. And God sent quail. Do you notice that it wasn't because they went to God? Because they never did. They went to Moses complaining, griping. Hand seekers get dissatisfied easily. Hand seekers are the ones that complain. Hand seekers are the ones who get mad when somebody else get blessed. Hand seekers get mad when somebody else get healed. And they get mad at God. Hand seekers, ready for this one? Folk who just seek his hand get mad when he takes a loved one home to be with him and stop coming to church. That's hand seekers. But faith seekers know that good things may not always happen, but as long as I've got Jesus on my side, as long as I'm in relationship with him, he will either warn me that it's coming before time or give me comfort during the test. My God, which are you going to be? Decide today. Decide right now today what if you're going to be a hand seeker or a faith seeker. If you're going to be a hand seeker, let me tell you, God is merciful. You'll always have some things. If you're going to be a face seeker, the things will never have you. You'll be willing to give it up. Well, as we look deeper into Moses' life and his relationship with God, we're going to see that God did some absolutely amazing things because Moses sought his face and not his hand. God bless you, and may he keep you, is my prayer. I love you. And I want to thank those of you who are so diligent in giving to the church, to the ministry. Thank you. For those of you who are not so much, we love you. Consider being a giver. After all, Jesus said, if you give, it'll be given unto you in good measure. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over shall men give unto my bosom. But you didn't know that, did you? Because you didn't spend time with him. Spend time with him. He'll speak to you and tell you what he wants you to give. God bless you again. And to all of you, I'll say this. 2 things. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your families. And be kind to one another. I'm Pastor Anthony Gray. God bless you.